4, pursuant to Standing Order 81-4, Main Estimates 2021, Vote 1 under Invest in Canada Hub, referred to the committee on Wednesday, September 30th. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of September the 23rd, 2020. The proceedings are available via the House of Commons website. To ensure an orderly meeting, I would like to outline a few rules to follow. Members and witnesses may speak in the official language of their choice. Interpretation services are available for this meeting. You have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either Floor, English, or French. For members participating in person, proceed as you usually would when the whole committee is meeting in person in a committee room. Keep in mind the directives from the Board of Internal Economy regarding masking and health protocols for everyone. Before speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name. If you are on the video conference, please click on the microphone icon to unmute yourself. Those in the room, your microphone will be controlled as normal by the Proceedings and Verifications Officer. A reminder that all comments by members and witnesses need to be addressed through the chair. And when you are not speaking, your mic should be on mute. So pursuant to that standing order, I'd like to welcome Minister Ning, Minister of Small Business, Export Promotion and International Trade, and her officials. Minister Ning will be here for 1 hour and her officials will remain for the second hour. So Minister Ning, I turn the floor over to you. Welcome to our committee and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. Merci, Madame la Présidente, and good afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
To the vice chairs and to all the members of the committee. It's an absolute pleasure to be with you, to assist the committee in its important work, and an honor to speak to Canadians. Merci de m'avoir donné l'occasion de faire les d'une pièce.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to do. Thank you for giving me the at a time.
Mask up, test and trace, and a once-in-a-generation crisis. A year ago, if these words resonated at all with Canadians, it would have been as far-fetched plots from sci-fi films or from books. Today, however, they're words that we would use if we were asked to write the opening chapter of Canada's COVID-19 story. I know that my version of this chapter would acknowledge how extraordinarily difficult these last 8 months have been for Canadians, and during this time, I have been across the country, mostly virtually, and have spoken to thousands of Canadians, so many of whom are business owners and entrepreneurs whose lives and livelihoods have been turned upside down by this crisis. Canadians have shown all of us time and again that they are incredibly resilient, hardworking, and innovative. But many worried about what comes next, and that is understandable. Madame la Présidente, je vais répéter.
Madam Chair, I'm going to repeat what our government said to the Canadian population since the beginning of this pandemic.
The best way for us to get through the challenges we face is by facing them together as Team Canada. That is what we have done together since day one, and this is what we will continue to do. Depuis le début, notre approche.
Since the beginning of the pandemic, our approach has been targeting economic support for Canadians, all the while doing everything necessary to protect people's health.
Is that Canada's COVID-19 economic response plan has helped protect millions of jobs across Canada, provide emergency supports to families, and kept the lights on for businesses with lending support and the wage subsidy. And just yesterday, we tabled legislation that will expand and extend the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy and launch the new Canada Emergency Rent Subsidy. Both programs will support businesses across the country and continue to help Canadians throughout this crisis. The pandemic also reminded us, in stark terms, how our world is truly interconnected. It has underscored the absolute importance of international collaboration and cooperation. And yet, as COVID-19 swept the world, many countries responded by restricting trade, the linchpin as prosperity for so many national economies. As of June, some 97 countries have responded to the pandemic by implementing more than 200 restrictions on cross-border trade. As of last month, 142 of those restrictions remain in place. Ce n'est pas la bonne voie à suivre surtout pour
This is not the best path to follow, especially for a country such as Canada.
2/3 of Canada's economy and supports 3.3 million jobs, or 1 out of every 6. COVID-19 should not and cannot be used as an excuse to stop trading or to turn inward with protectionist policies. Instead, we need to focus on the fundamentals: open trade and investment, diversify our trade, develop solutions to supply chain challenges. And that is what we have done. We have worked with Canadian exporters to find innovative solutions. Nous avons travaillé avec nos partenaires.
We have worked with our international partners in order to eliminate trade barriers that were not necessary, and also we have tried to keep an open value chain for essential products such as medication and food.
Pandemic, for example, I've been working closely with my international partners from the G20, the WTO, the APEC, and others to ensure that our supply chains remain open, our businesses continue their work, and that crucial goods and services flow. And through Canada's leadership of the Ottawa Group on WTO reform, we're helping shape the future of multilateral, rules-based trade that is really key to global prosperity. It's this kind of global cooperation that is going to see us rise to and overcome COVID-19. Given the importance of international trade to Canada's economy, it's clear that exporting, importing, and attracting investment from around the world will be critical to our ongoing recovery. But it's not quite business as usual. The pandemic has forced us to adapt in innovative ways that are redefining how international trade can be done. Consider the virtual trade mission to South Korea that I am thrilled to be leading this week. In fact, starting tonight. More than 140 Canadian small businesses are signed up to participate in this groundbreaking endeavor. Many, many more would have, many more that would have joined us in a physical trade mission. Our government is adapting our services to better serve Canadian businesses. This morning, the Prime Minister and I announced the revamping of the CanExport SMEs program. It's delivered by the Trade Commissioner Service. This program gives our resilient and innovative small businesses grants of up to $75,000 to grow their business in the international markets. And now this funding will help them navigate a COVID-19 landscape with funding to expand their digital and e-commerce presence and participate in virtual trade missions and virtual trade shows. This new world of digital international trade will continue to allow Canadian businesses to take advantage of Canada's preferential trade agreements. We have 14 of them. It gives us priority access to 2/3 of the global economy and to 1.5 billion customers. To better leverage agreements like the CPTPP and CETA, Global Affairs Canada is currently rolling out a concerted promotion strategy with a sector-focused approach to increase awareness of these ambitious trade agreements. Il s'agit de faire en sorte que nos
We have to make sure that our businesses and our workers in all regions truly benefit from opportunities in growth markets throughout the world.
We're taking a Team Canada approach, an approach under the umbrella of Canada Trade. This is what I call our trade toolbox, which fall under my mandate. This includes the tools in this toolbox, include the Canadian Trade Commissioner Service. It includes Export Development Canada, or EDC, Business Development Canada, or BDC, the Canadian Commercial Corporation, and Invest in Canada. We're all working together to help our businesses succeed here at home and abroad. And during my recent meeting with my provincial and territorial counterparts, we understood that if Canada is going to get through this difficult period, it will be key for all of us to mobilize small businesses and businesses of all sizes so that we could support their efforts to access the international market. It's equally key that in this mobilization, we include people of all backgrounds and diverse identities, including women, Indigenous people, visible minorities, young people, and LGBTQ2 entrepreneurs. Because diversifying trade is about more than where we trade and what we trade. It's about who trades. It's about supporting and encouraging new exporters, whether they're just starting out or they've never exported before. It's about being inclusive because we know that trade works best when it benefits all Canadians, whether it's in traditional sectors like natural resources and agri-foods or emerging sectors like artificial intelligence or health tech. As we move through this pandemic and build a path to a strong economic recovery for Canadians, I know that words such as inclusive, innovative, resilient, collaborative, and adaptable will be among those to describe how we have performed. These words are at the heart of what Team Canada is really about, coming together to build on economic prosperity for our businesses of all sizes and to improve the quality of life for families and for all Canadians. Thank you so much. Merci à tous. Now I'm happy to answer any questions that the committee has for me. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ng. I'd like to acknowledge the officials that are also with you today from the Department of Foreign Affairs, Trade and Development. John Hannaford, Deputy Minister, International Trade. Steve Barrell, Assistant Deputy Minister, Trade Policy and Negotiations and Chief Trade Negotiator of the Canada-United States-Mexico Agreement. And Nick Ouellette, Assistant Deputy Minister and Chief Financial Officer, Corporate Planning, Finance and Information Technology. And Sarah Wilshaw is back again with us, Chief Trade Commissioner, Assistant Deputy Minister, International Business Development, Investment and Innovation. Welcome to all of you. We will move right away on into questions. And Ms. Gray for 6 minutes, please.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Minister, for being here. I know that this is the first time that you've been in front of this committee in a year, over a year during this Parliament, so it's good to see you. And I know that we only have you for an hour today. We are starting a Canada-UK study shortly, so I'm hoping that you will commit with us today to come back when we're having that study.
Hello there. Of course, Ms. Gray, I would always be happy to come back and talk to my parliamentary colleagues.
Great, thank you, Minister. I heard through Export Development Canada that they were instructed not to pay the government the yearly dividend this year, as is obligated for Crown corporations. Would you say that that was accurate for this year?
Ms. Gray, thank you so much for that. Perhaps on this one, I'm going to ask my deputy if he would respond, please.
Well, Minister, actually, maybe if it's okay, because I know that we have the officials here a little bit later, and your time is so limited today. So maybe I'll just move on, and then we can address that later. I mean, this is your department, and surely it would have been yourself, or if not, someone else that would have given this direction. So if you're not sure about that, that's a little concerning, but I'll move on to another question here. I wanted to ask you about customs brokers, and I know that the government had implemented a customs broker deferral program as part of the pandemic sort of plan. And as part of this, customs brokers, they have to take out bonds, for businesses, and this is both for importing and exporting. And so I'm wondering if you're aware of this issue and have done any analysis on the custom broker deferral program.
I'm really, excuse me, boy, something's wrong with my voice today. Ms. Gray, that's a terrific question. Of course, that is a key function that is performed by Export Development Canada, and throughout this pandemic, what we have endeavored to do is make sure that we are looking at the range of programs and services, including bonding services for businesses, so that they can indeed be supported throughout this pandemic. And it's work that that is ongoing, and we'll keep doing what we need to do to support Canada's exporters.
Thank you, Minister. So as part of this, there might be unintended financial consequences for these brokers, because they're being asked to take on the bonds without remittance due to the deferrals. And so are you working on any plans to rectify this? Do you have a plan that you're working on? Because, as we're looking at these custom brokers, they do play a significant role in ensuring that our supply chains are moving and remain open. And there's a concern that, as these brokers are taking on more risk, that they're getting to a point that potentially they might not be able to. So do you have a plan to address this? Are you working on a plan to address this?
I am very happy to always look at excuse me, at measures that will help Canadian businesses, and certainly businesses that are working through the disruptions in the supply chains in the global economy, is something that is absolutely top of mind for all of my officials, and it's what I call our Team Canada approach. Throughout this pandemic, we have worked steadfast to make sure that all of the tools that we have here are lined up in a way to help our businesses through this. And I can't underscore the supply chain challenges that have taken place. Our Chief Trade Commissioner, of course, is here, and throughout this time period, they have done enormous work, to which I thank them enormously, to help unclog some of those very issues and those supply chain challenges that our exporters have been facing. And this is work and that we're just going to continue to do.
Okay, Minister. So are you working on a plan right now, though? Like, are you working on a plan for this issue specifically?
We continue to we're working on a plan overall to help our businesses and our exporters make sure that they are continuing to trade across the world. And so whether the businesses are here or whether they are across the board, we continue to work on a plan always to help our businesses through this.
Okay. So I wanted to ask about the investment in Canada Hub. So do you have a dollar value of foreign direct investments from businesses that would directly attribute to the Investment Canada Hub? You know, looking at the main estimates, looking at the budget that was allocated for that. So do you have an amount as to what was invested based on what we invested in this?
Well, that's a terrific question, and Invest in Canada is such an important entity to help our Canadian businesses. It's the very first time that there is a single one window mechanism, I guess it is, to help our investors who are looking to invest in Canadian businesses and here in Canada. So it's terrific the work that they have done. Absolutely, we have seen, since Invest in Canada has been in place, an increase in FDI to the country. And this is directly as a result of their work and their work in collaboration, like I said, with, as I said earlier, with the Trade Canada team. That toolbox, Invest in Canada, is a very important feature of that.
Okay, thank you, Minister, for that high level sort of description, but what I'm looking for is, what is the dollar value? Like, how many jobs were created from this? What is the dollar value in investment? Do you have that number? Do you know what those numbers are?
Yeah, in fact, yes, $67 billion were invested just last year in Canada through the work of the Invest in Canada Hub.
Okay, is that something?
Thank you very,
could we get that
very much, Ms. Gray. Yes, thank you. On to Mr. Raya for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Minister and all your officials, welcome to the committee. This COVID pandemic, Minister, as we all know, has hit the reset button across the world, in almost every single country in the world. Canada, for us, trade is very important. 60% of our GDP comes from trade. Not only the international trade that is getting affected now, but we are expecting that it is continue to be detrimental to the old way the trade was being done. One reason may be the increasing self-reliance, the importance of self-reliance, not only for Canada, but many other countries. That may bring in some protectionist measures in different countries. So the whole parameter is getting changed. We are entering to a new normal in terms of international trade. So I think we have to take steps to see how is that we can help Canadian businesses continue to export to outside of North American market. That is the key thing. You mentioned about EDC, BDC, and Canadian Commercial Corporation. It's good that the funding is available, but I think we'll have to go down. For example, with Export Development Corporation, the cost of capital has come down. So we have to see whether that has been translated into the interest cost paid by the Canadian exporters. I will not even talk about BDC because I have got always with issues with BDC. But with regarding to CCC, we have to see, have they changed their objective or the strategy so that they can help more number of small Canadian companies enter the export market. The energy exports have already started going down, not just due to the pandemic, but also due to the consumption getting affected by, for example, the electric vehicles, and the natural gas consumption is getting affected due to the peaker plants being replaced by mega battery packs. In fact, in Canada, the first major battery packs are getting implemented in Alberta. So there things have changed very dramatically in the last 9-10 months, and the new normal that we are entering into. I would like to know what is that you specifically are take specific measures that you are taking to help Canadian small businesses export in this new normal.
Well, thank you so much to my honorable colleague for that excellent question. Certainly, Canada, as you pointed out, has been committed to open trade well before COVID-19, and we are committed to trade agreements because they work. We're committed to multilateral rules-based trade because they work, and rules-based trade establishes stability, predictability on trading relationships. It ensures balance, it ensures fairness, it creates new opportunities for businesses, and it certainly supports well-paying jobs for Canadians. We have preferential access to many uh, uh, billion and a half customers through many economies. So, but you're absolutely right. Having the trade agreements, but without the other side, which is to help our Canadian businesses take advantage of those opportunities in the global marketplace, would be a missed opportunity, which is why I proudly serve as Canada's Minister for both small businesses and export promotion, because we got to tell people about it, and also Canada's Minister for International Trade. And throughout the pandemic, we have been, I won't go into the range of emergency supports that we have been providing, but what we have done here in the Canada Trade Toolbox, in the BDC, the EDC, the Canadian Commercial Corporation, Invest in Canada, as well as the Trade Commissioner Service, we've created an internal working group, which is called the Business Export and Trade Recovery Team. And this incredible dynamic team works together during this time, during COVID-19, to be sure that we are doing everything we possibly can to ensure that our businesses have the supports that are needed to help them grow and to grow their businesses into that international marketplace, complemented with the emergency measures that we have in place, will put them on that right kind of footing so that they are best primed for that economic recovery when it is time to do so. And we will continue to work very, very hard to support our small businesses throughout this time. Indeed, all of our businesses that are exporting into those international markets.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ray. I'm sorry the time is up. On to Mr. Savard Tremblay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Minister, for your presentation. I wanted to start out by asking a question regarding regarding negotiations with Mercosur countries. We know that international trade is a good thing and that exports will play an important role in the economic recovery. We hope this recovery will be swift. As for Mercosur, ecological groups asked for a moratorium a few months ago, even though we are presently in a record year for wildfires in that region of the world. And we know that this could pose a certain danger for our farmers who really had a rough time these last few years, namely in the poultry sector that is under supply management. And we were told that certain discussions were still underway with the countries in this region of the world. So I'm wondering if there is a political will in your department to move forward with these negotiations.
Much for that important question. Let me begin by saying that our trade decisions will always be based on what is in the interest of Canadians. And we do recognize the health of forests in the region and how crucial that is to the well-being of both people and our planet. And our government firmly is committed to the principle that both free and progressive trade and protecting the environment as well as Indigenous rights should be mutually supportive. Now, we as a government are committed to pursuing core environmental provisions focused on maintaining high levels of environmental protection and governance. And I can assure my colleague that that we will continue to look for all trade opportunities, but um, but but we will always do so in the best interest of Canadians, and I can assure my colleague that we're committed to those values when assessing the possibility of any future trade agreement. And on your question with respect to farmers, there's no question that our farmers, in particular farmers in Quebec, are just so incredibly important to the Canadian economy. And I want to assure that that the Prime Minister has been clear that we will be making no supply management concessions in any future trade agreements. Merci beaucoup.
Ben, je crois que j'ai toujours du temps. Alors, Madame la ministre, c'est...
I think I still have some time. I think it's unfortunate that all these engagements were repeated multiple times and didn't lead to results and were not necessarily respected. But there's no moratorium presently. These negotiations are still underway. This is what I understood. Is that still the case?
To the honorable member, we have had no since 2019, and certainly in this most recent period, our entire focus largely has been to help our businesses through COVID-19. For those businesses that are operating abroad, making sure that they get the support that is needed.
Attendez, je vous ai pas parlé de...
No, but I didn't talk about any formal round. We were talking about discussions. This was raised last Friday during this committee.
I want to assure the member that that the values that underscore our approach towards trade, and I think that we have a strong record of this, is that our values around protecting the environment and protecting rights like Indigenous rights is first and foremost. And yes, we will continue to talk to our partners, absolutely, but anything that we do will always be in the interest of Canadian businesses and Canadians.
Madam Chair, how much time do I have left? 1 minute, great. So I have another question. During a recent committee, Madam Minister, we were talking about the European Union and Canada trade agreement, and so you insisted on the necessity to make sure that the businesses and the workers would benefit from this agreement. So what do we do with the trade deficit between Canada and the EU? It's gotten worse. It's gotten much worse since the implementation of the trade agreement between Canada and Europe.
Well, to the honorable member, CETA absolutely marked a new chapter in the relationship between the EU and Canada, and it is delivering unparalleled opportunities for Canadians and for our businesses. We will, I've had the opportunity to work with the former EU Trade Commissioner and Commissioner Hogan, and just the other day I was speaking to Trade Commissioner Dombrovskis, and all of us are absolutely focused on ensuring that we are able to create greater opportunities for our businesses to capitalize on that important agreement and on those opportunities in the European countries. It's been terrific to have talked to several colleagues from the European Union countries, and as CETA takes place, we will need to keep doing the work to help our businesses become even more export ready, understand the opportunities and the market access that they have, and help them get the benefits of those of that access. And that's particularly important now as we head towards economic recovery, so that we can create those kinds of prosperity for Canadian businesses and anchored in the creation of Canadian jobs.
Thank you very much, Minister. On to Mr. Blakey for 6 minutes.
Thank you very much. Hello, Madam Minister. You will recall that the government committed in February to making changes to the policy on tabling treaties in Parliament. And I'm just wondering if you could advise the committee as to when the government intends to implement those changes to the policy.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for asking that question. And I want to assure the member that our government is absolutely committed to those amendments to the policy. Of course, the formal implementation was delayed by the pandemic, but we're working to formalize these changes. But I want to assure you, we will absolutely adhere to the commitments that we made and fulfilling the obligations under the obligations that we made.
And do you have a timeline for that? Is that something that will be done, say, by the end of the year?
We're working as quickly as we can on this, and we are hoping that we will be able to get that done by the end of this year. Yes.
Okay, I'm going to take that as a commitment unless you say otherwise. Now, I understand that Canada has been talking with the United Kingdom about a potential trade deal. Of course, the important deadline there is December 31st as the UK leaves the European Union. And under the terms of that policy change, it's foreseen that Parliament would get notice of those talks. Now, I understand it's the government's position that what they're negotiating currently is not a comprehensive trade agreement, but a transitional trade agreement. I'm wondering if you can provide us with a definition of a transitional trade agreement and the definition of a comprehensive trade agreement. And I don't expect you to do that right now off the cuff, but if you could table them with the committee in advance of us beginning the Canada-UK study, which will be beginning shortly, that would be very helpful. Is that something that your department can do?
Well, thank you so very much for that, and I'm happy to have the department provide you with that information, and the officials who are here may be able to answer more of that a little later in their portion, but we can provide that information.
I appreciate that. It'll be useful to our study of the situation in Canada, of a potential agreement between Canada and the UK. On the question of negotiating with Mercosur, and I just want to echo some of my colleagues' comments about concern about negotiating a trade agreement in light of what Brazil is doing to the rainforest. I take your answer, and I know we heard something similar from one of your officials on Friday about how the government believes that an environmental agenda can go hand in hand with a trade agenda. But as the minister, I'm wondering, is there anything that Bolsonaro could do to the rainforest that would cause the Canadian government to feel it's inappropriate to be negotiating a trade deal with Brazil at this time?
Well, thanks for that question. I think our record speaks for itself. We have negotiated the CPTPP. We have negotiated a high standards agreement in CETA. We have also done that in the recent negotiations with the new NAFTA in CUSMA. So I think our record is, I think there's a record there to follow on where standards around labor, standards around environmental protection, standards around the respect for Indigenous rights. These are all values and that underpin the manner in which we undertake trade discussions, and this will be no different. But as I said to our colleague earlier, that that we are going to, I can assure you that we are going to, continue to consult and be sure that that whatever we do will always be in the interest of Canadians.
I mean, I think what I'm hearing there, though, is that there's no threshold for this government in terms of environmental abuse or abuse of human rights, for instance, that would cause the government to say, this is we don't want to support governments that are engaged in this kind of behavior. So the trade negotiation is always a possibility, regardless of a country's environmental or human rights track record. There's no point at which Canada would say, at least under the current leadership, would say, no, we're not going to lend any kind of credibility to the actions of this government by saying Canada considers them a perfectly legitimate potential trading partner.
Well, I would disagree with you, because I think that the values that I just talked about, and how we are respectful of those values, that we are accountable Canadians for.
So Bolsonaro's treatment of the rainforest.
Right? Don't I have the time to answer?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. Blakey, your time is up.
I'm just seeking a clarification.
Short answer, please.
So I think our clarity around the values that we hold, particularly around the environment, particularly around human rights, is something that we hold, that is in the interest of Canadians, and we have we've demonstrated that we are able to ensure those high standards, and we're going to keep doing this, and everything we do will be in the interest of Canadians.
Thank you very much. On to Mr. Abutoff for 5 minutes.
Good afternoon, Minister, and thanks for appearing today in front of the committee. My first question to you on Invest in Canada program. What is your budget for 2020-2021?
Thank you so much for that question, and for some reason I don't have it right in front of me. Oh, you know what? It is 35 million.
Okay,
there we go.
35 million. And
yes.
You mentioned that the direct investment came to Canada was last year, I believe, was 67 billion. Is that number confirmed?
67 billion. Yes, it is.
Okay, so is that
in foreign direct investment?
Good. Is that an increase or a decrease from the year before?
Let me get back to you very specifically on that, because I want to make sure that I always give colleagues and certainly the committee accurate information.
Okay. Out of the $67 billion, which sectors you see that we show a growth, and where the most of the investment coming to invest in which sectors, if you can be specific on that?
Well, Invest in Canada, as I said earlier, is that one window support, which I think has been absolutely terrific. It's been terrific because it works with our provincial and territorial colleagues as well. We're really working as Team Canada to attract that investment, and
but I'm interested in the sectors, Minister, if you don't mind. Where the investment coming? Like if you notice, because if you have those figures, you can probably plan to work on growing sectors that they're not getting enough attention, or they're not getting enough attraction from international investors.
Well, I would say that our focus steadfastly has been to make sure that we are working with international investors, so that they are looking at Canada as an international investment destination.
I'm not questioning your intentions, Minister. All I'm saying is, can you be specific at which sectors that we see growth, which sectors we see a decline, and what is the plan to be able to work on the sectors that they're not getting enough attention of attractions from investors across the world?
Well, let me give you some supporting facts and figures. So as I said earlier, $67 billion was invested in 2019. The FDI network facilitated 131 wins that generate $2.7 billion, creating 4,400 jobs. There are 232 visits to Canada from potential investors, 850 FDI projects, and 4,010 outcalls.
But those not dollar figures, Minister. I'm really interested in those figures because I don't see them anywhere. I can't find them anywhere. And I believe, my background is international trade, and I know if there's a sector that need, attention to plan for the future, to increase your budget toward which sector we need to pay attention more or more attention to. That's exactly how we can generate, best results. So if you don't have those figures, I would really appreciate if we can get them. The next question is, where do you see our weaknesses on international trade?
Well, let me answer the question this way. Of course, supporting traditional sectors like agriculture and agri-food from across the prairies and rural Canada is important. Supporting fisheries from all three coasts, natural resources and energy from Alberta, Saguenay from Quebec, steel and auto from Ontario, aerospace manufacturing from Quebec, forestry products from several regions. And why? Because these sectors are globally competitive. And Canada is going to retain and increase our share of these tangible trades. But at the same time, we want to help shift and help those businesses in the knowledge economy grow and grow into the international marketplace. And that is the kind of work that we are doing to help our traditional trading sectors grow and get that market share and continue to work beyond those sectors so that we can get our Canadian companies growing in that international marketplace and create great jobs that are anchored here in Canada.
Minister, that's who we are. That's who we are. What Quebec does or what Alberta does, that Prairie does. Like we know that every province in the country has certain competitive edge over certain industry and certain products. What is your plan? Where do you think the growth is going to be? That's what we need to hear. Where is the growth? And that at least we know exactly what's your plan for the future.
Absolutely.
Minister, if you could make that a short answer or else kind of tie it into someone else's answer, please.
Sure. Businesses are doing an enormous amount of growth, whether it is in clean tech or agri-tech or in health tech, a range of businesses and services in the economies taking advantage of these terrific trade agreements. So our commitment has been steadfast. We're going to always watch the back of our Canadian businesses during this time and make sure they get on that economic recovery so that they can accrue those jobs here in Canada anchored in that recovery period. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. On to Mr. Dhaliwal for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To the Minister, the signing of CETA came into effect over 3 years ago, and early reports from the Global Affairs Canada showed that there were massive jumps in Canadian exports to countries like Netherlands, which saw a 75% increase, Ireland, which saw 65% increase, and Germany, which saw 37% increase. Could you tell us how the COVID has impacted these early successes and how the agreement will be impacted as we continue to deal with the second wave in Europe and in Canada?
Well, thank you so much for that question. As I said earlier, CETA really was a high mark, for trade between Canada and the European Union. We have been working very hard to help our Canadian businesses, particularly those small businesses, understand those market opportunities in the European Union to help them grow. You're right, the figures that you quoted has simply indicated one thing, and that is that this trade agreement really is working for the benefit of our businesses, but there certainly is work to do. And the member, of course, comes from British Columbia. I'm thrilled that as part of our export diversification strategy, we invested in the Trade Accelerator Program. It actually collaborates with the Export Navigator Program in BC, helping our Canadian businesses understand those market opportunities in the European Union. 500 million customers. I mean, that's what's available to our Canadian businesses. So looking forward to continue to help businesses get access to those opportunities and create the prosperity that our Canadian businesses will need to do here in Canada, anchored in good Canadian jobs.
Minister, in Surrey Newton, almost 85% of the businesses are small businesses, and with your large portfolio that includes business and international trade. How do you see the integration between the two fields in your work?
Well, that is a terrific question, and it is really truly an honor to be able to serve as the minister responsible for both small businesses as well as international trade. I think all the members here understand that 99% of our businesses are small and medium-sized businesses. So to have the Canada Trade umbrella, which is what I call our trade toolbox, and having in there the Trade Commissioner Service, who is, Canada's best business development team and sales force around the world, helping our small businesses get access to capital through Business Development Canada, making sure that insurance and the products that are needed for businesses to export and grow into the international marketplace. And for those businesses, that are working in places around the globe where they need a country-to-country contract, the Canadian Commercial Corporation. And so our team we do take a Team Canada approach with both small businesses on one hand and international trade on the other, and really creating a no wrong doors approach so that we can help our businesses in their startup, scale up, and accessing new markets.
Minister, new measures aimed at slowing the spread of COVID-19 significantly affected how consumers make retail purchases, and the option to purchase online has become an important alternate to walking into a retail store. And retail e-commerce sales have gone up, with some retailers relying more on this method. Could you please touch on some of the different e-commerce trends observed? And despite the pandemic, business continues to do business abroad. How do you support them, considering that every country is dealing with this health crisis differently?
Yeah, absolutely. Digital trade and e-commerce has been incredibly important. And that is why earlier today, I was so pleased to be with the Prime Minister to make an announcement about CanExport and how we have pivoted the CanExport program, CanExport for SMEs in particular, so that businesses get up to $75,000 to be able to do things like attend a virtual trade mission, or to do those virtual business-to-business meetings, helping them get to the support they need to become more digital and to not only be more competitive here at home and to pivot their business during COVID-19, but to access those opportunities globally. Tonight, I start a virtual trade mission, a first of its kind, to South Korea. And there are many businesses, including women entrepreneurs, who are a part of this mission, looking to explore and grow into a market. And we're going to do this virtually and digitally. So we're going to adapt, and the CanExport program is going to adapt also in the same way to help our businesses take advantage, I hope, of the opportunities that I hope will continue to exist, but they'll just do it a little differently.
Thank you very much, Minister.
Thank you.
On to Monsieur Savard Tremblay for 2.5 minutes.
Merci.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Recently, Madam Minister announced a $12 million investment for small businesses assistance, support local trade. So my question is, could we get some details about the amounts that have been granted? How many companies per province have already benefited from this assistance program per province? So, for instance, we know that this PME fund is managed by the Chamber of Commerce, Ontario Chamber of Commerce, and its purpose is to help SMEs in Canada for the recovery phase. But why granting the management of these $12 million to the Ontario Chamber of Commerce? So why haven't you dealt with all provinces?
It's a very important question, and I want to assure the member that the $12 million investment that we have made, working through the Chamber of Commerce network through all of the provinces and territories, including Quebec, so that there is that additional support for businesses who can apply for a grant, by the way, and this is up to $5,000 per business, and it's to help them support local businesses. It'll help businesses deal with some of the expenses that they may have had to incur to buy PPEs or to have done some modifications in response to health measures, and or to even go digital. There is always more work to be done, and I'm very pleased that we will continue to do that, listening very, very intently to businesses. And that's what this is. This is this is a program that we're partnering with all the chambers across the country.
Thank you.
So that they can help businesses.
Thank you, Madam Minister. Mr. Blakey for 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. I was curious. I know the minister mentioned in her opening remarks some of the supply chain challenges that Canada has faced, and of course, there's been actions to try and ensure that some of the things we most need during the pandemic are being manufactured here in Canada. And there's concern by a number of Canadians about the investor state dispute settlement clauses in the various trade agreements to which we are party, and Canada's financial and legal exposure under those provisions. I'm just wondering, is that a concern of the government? Is it something that's been part of the discussions around setting up domestic supply chains for PPE and other medically necessary supplies?
Well, what we have, thank you for that question. What we have done during this period is to be sure to create more resilient supply chains. Certainly, we have seen early in the pandemic the need for items like PPE and ventilators and so forth. We've done, I guess the work is a bit in two-part. On the one hand, making sure that that supply chain resilience really has, so that Canadian companies can depend on that. And that's where the Trade Commissioner Service has been absolutely extraordinary to make sure that they are problem solving and ensuring that the inputs into the supply chain, the Canadian supply chain, is work that they have been steadfastly working on. And here, Made in Canada is what we have stood up, helping Canadian companies, asking Canadian companies to be a part of the COVID-19 solution. So
are you concerned at all that those efforts might expose us under ISDS provisions to international trade tribunal proceedings?
We have always been very careful, and we continue to be. I said earlier
Could you highlight just some of the kind of measures that the government has taken in order to shield us from exposure under such provisions?
Mr. Blakey's time is up. I don't know if you can give him a short answer, or you could get him some of that information offline. We have you for 5 more minutes here, and we have our next, Mr. Hoback is the next questioner on the table.
Minister, it's great to see you. Minister, the Conservatives wanted you for the full 2 hours. I think you're gonna have to give the chair some chocolates or something, because she only wanted you here for an hour. So if you give her some chocolates, I'm sure she'll let you stay the full time. Minister, I want to talk to you about EDC and our Trade Commissioner Services, and just looking forward, because we have a structural change that has now hit the world, and that's COVID-19. And how are we going to do business in this new world? And one of the concerns I have with EDC and BDC and CCC is, okay, have they reassessed this new world? For example, in EDC, have you gone through your lines of credits country by country and reevaluated the risk? And has the risk cost gone up in such a way that businesses now in Canada have to pay more for that risk? Can you give us some insight into that?
Thank you so much, and it's wonderful to be here with you. And I'm sorry that we aren't here, spending more time together. But suffice it to say that during COVID-19, it has been extremely important to make sure that our crown corporations and indeed our assets that are there to help businesses are helping businesses, and this is why I created what I call the BETTER team. BETTER standing for Business Export Recovery table, and this is the working together of BDC, EDC, Trade Commissioner Service, CCC, so that we really are working together to look at how we best can.
When will we start to see some reports from this group? When are we going to start to see some goals or some ambitions or some ideas, so that we as a small business can start to say, okay, this is where they're going, this is what I need to align to? Do you have some timetables and we're going to start seeing some action there?
Well, it's a working table. It's
Fair
actually
enough.
part of the operations. And what we try to do, just as the Prime Minister has done in creating small business and export and international trade together, is to create that better synergy so that we are working as Team Canada. And I think that that's what Canadian businesses are asking of us. And I'm thrilled with the leadership that my deputy has been providing together
Okay, sorry,
with the Crown
I don't mean to
Corporation.
be rude. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be disrespectful either, but I do only have 5 minutes. When you look at EDC and you look at the loans that they had outstanding when COVID hit, are we going to see a large write-down from EDC in loans that that for one reason or another weren't fulfilled or business wasn't fulfilled? Do we have a huge liability sitting over there right now, or do you have any indication of what that looks like?
Well, what I would say about EDC during this period is that they have done incredible work. They've done incredible work because
Yeah,
they've
that's not the question. I agree with you. They do great work. Same with trade commissioners. In fact, my concern is we don't have enough trade commissioners in the right countries. But what I'm really concerned about is the liability that EDC takes on when they start underwriting the business in other countries. And when you get hit with something like a pandemic, there's got to be a write-down. There's got to be a hit. So I'm just kind of curious how big that hit is and what it's going to look like, and what are we going to do to mitigate that going forward. And how do we make sure our businesses don't end up paying for it going forward?
Well, I think that we all will agree that what is absolutely important is that they're firing at all cylinders right now to help our businesses through this period. And EDC, as has an independent, an arm's length rather. I mean, an arm's length Crown Corporation. I mean, makes those judicious decisions, together with its board, and we are working very closely to be sure that that those considerations are such that that it really supports Canadian exporters at this critical time, because I think that that's what's needed, is to be able to support our exporters during this time.
I agree, and they are arm's length Crown corporations, but in the same breath, during the pandemic, they're designated with certain tasks to deal with Canadian businesses in a fashion that they normally don't do. So they do take a lot of direction from the government, and they have in the past. And I don't say that's the wrong thing. I think that might have been a good thing considering what we're facing and our businesses were facing. But I need them now to pivot to take care of these businesses in the foreign markets. So when I look at the new markets that are evolving, are they equipped? Are they ready to do that? Do they have a sense of where the priorities should be and what sector should be the priority? And then do we have the lines of credits established or reestablished in those markets to take advantage of? And do Canadian business understand that they're available?
Well, the effort of helping Canadian businesses understand that this is a critical tool is absolutely a challenge. I suppose that's probably why I have, expert promotion as part of the title, because that is absolutely an area that we need to keep doing. And now during the pandemic, I think it's more needed than ever, so that they actually are getting Team Canada and Trade Team Canada, wrap their arms around so that they can problem solve as they need to during this time, and support it during this time so we can bridge them to better times, beyond COVID-19.
Okay. And then in your announcement today, when will we see the fine print, the actual details on the application process? Who qualifies for the $75,000? What's the benchmarks? What do they have to achieve or accomplish in order to get that or have it forgiven? We've had announcements over this last year from this government, and the announcements made, and then it looks like the bureaucracy is scrambling to deliver it. So can you give us a time frame or a sense of time frame when business can actually look at it, apply for it, and move forward with it?
Well, the CanExport SME program has been in place. In fact, our government made an investment of $190 million for this program. What we
So
did
this is
today,
just a re-announcement of what you've done before then?
No, it is to make sure that this program absolutely is responsive to businesses who need to do business in a different way during COVID-19. I think you'll agree that getting on a plane and traveling is not something that businesses would be the best use of that money, whereas helping them develop their virtual capability and helping them get to virtual trade shows or virtual business-to-business meetings is what they need, and that's what the
Fair enough,
capacity
but
that
then
this
your
is.
structure within global affairs will have to adjust accordingly. You don't need logistics people planning trade trips. You need those people now to pivot to be representatives in different countries for these businesses. So what has been done in your area to accomplish that? Because we've got some great people that do all sorts of great work, but they might be in their old job might be not what's required right now. So how do we get them in the right areas so that we're utilizing as effectively as possible?
Well, we have in previous budgets certainly increased investments to the Trade Commissioner Service, but I think today and tonight,
I'd love a budget. Wouldn't you love a budget?
Tonight, my virtual trade mission to Korea which is the first of its kind, I think is a perfect example of where Team Canada, Trade Team Canada is working to support the over 100 and some odd businesses that are coming with me virtually into Korea. So this,
Good
you
job.
know, yeah.
Can we join that? Can I join in on that call and listen in?
Well, I'm not. I mean, of course, you're welcome, because my trade commission, or my virtual trade missions are going. I think what you're going to see is a whole bunch of wonderful businesses, just like those ones we saw when you and I were in Africa, and we've got terrific female entrepreneurs. And if you think about it, if it was a physical trade mission, we wouldn't have these numbers. These numbers are off the charts, and it's absolutely terrific. And we're looking forward to helping them do those business to business connects and giving them the capacity to I hope grow and book contracts. I mean, in this market like South Korea, we're actually celebrating 5 years of that trade agreement. So
actually, that's a trade agreement that everybody voted for, even the NDP, Daniel. Anyways, I guess just to sum up, I definitely would like to be made aware of those, so we can participate in. Not that we want to necessarily be vocal during the meeting, but at least listen in and listen to what businesses have to say and what works and what's not working. And
Randy, I've been promoting this trade mission forever. You need to look at my social media and everywhere else. I've been promoting it.
All right.
And of course, you're welcome. You're always welcome.
Minister, it's if we could keep you longer, we would love to have you stay. But sounds like you've got a pretty exciting evening ahead of you. So thank you very much for coming today. We would like you back several times, especially in the near future. We've got several things that we want to talk to you about. So thank you very much, Minister. We will continue on with our officials, and however you exit, you'll exit, and we will continue on with the officials that will be here. I'm on to Mr. Sarai for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was going to ask this to the minister, but since she's not there, I'll let one of the officials take this question. As she had already outlined, I think we know the pandemic's been challenging on female business owners. It's even been called a she-session. Last week, we heard about a recent virtual trade mission. I think that's the one that's about to happen. We're over 170 businesses were able to participate or will participate, in particular female business owners who may not have been able to attend an in-person trade mission are able to attend in this easier format than normal. Are there any thoughts on how we might be able to incorporate virtual aspects to future trade missions once travel restrictions are eased as a way to open up international trade opportunities for SMEs, especially as a way to assist female-run SMEs in order to access international markets? I'll maybe to our trade commissioner.
Hi, Madam Chair. Thanks. Happy to answer that question, and thank you for the question. Yes, I would. In a short answer is that we're really excited by the results that we are seeing from
Christine. There you are. Okay. I had.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. I wasn't. I could hear someone else talking. We are really excited by the results that we're seeing from this virtual trade mission. And as you say, I think it's making a lot of these more accessible events for others. And so what we're doing right now amongst the trade commissioners is sort of collecting best practices. And that also includes how we're doing other virtual events, like our participation in trade shows around the world. So a lot of the trade shows have gone virtual, and our folks on the ground are participating in these, and they've got all kinds of feedback coming in. So we are collecting all of that feedback, and we're going to see what we can do to apply these going forward. Because, as you say, if it makes it more accessible for women entrepreneurs or Indigenous entrepreneurs or visible minority entrepreneurs, others that might not have the opportunity to participate in a trade mission that takes them away from their home or their business or their family for a week or 10 days, not to mention the costs of those things. We want to make sure that we are preserving some of the best aspects of what we're learning in this particular time.
And maybe you can also help me in with travel restrictions and it being very difficult for importers as well as exporters, and in our case, more concerned with exporters, when they have issues abroad with their goods or payment or delivery or transportation, or as we saw in PPE matters, people taking them right as they were about to be boarded. What has the Trade Commission or EDC done to help assist Canadians or kind of mold their services in this particular time, and what are the kind of best practices that are emerging from this COVID experience?
Let's hope it's not an experiment. Madam Chair. but certainly countries around the world are taking measures, including border restrictions to address the pandemic, and those measures can pose challenges for Canadian companies and their representatives. And we understand, obviously, that foreign governments have legitimate public health and safety priorities, just as we do here. Our trade commissioners are working with the companies to help them navigate these, to understand what the restrictions are, to understand how to best, our folks are trying their best to advise Canadian companies if they do feel they need to travel. If they don't feel that they can travel, we are working with them to, let's say, pivot their services or their or how they are working with their clients and delivering on delivering their goods or services to clients in markets abroad. And so I think I mentioned last Friday that that our problem-solving service, which is one of our 4 key services, our problem-solving services requests have increased, I think, 47, 49%, something like that in the last little while. For obvious reasons, people are asking lots of questions about what they should do. We've been able to help people to either find new ways of doing business, or we've been, as the minister mentioned, the CanExport program has been put in place and made more flexible to support companies in accessing e-commerce platforms, search engine optimization, and working with others for financial payment transaction and securitizing those things.
Thank you very much, Ms. Wilshaw. On to Mr. Lobb.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first question I have is in regards to the CETA trade deal. And the first question is in regards to any progress being made with any of the non-trade barriers, or whatever you want to call them, in regards to the pork and beef sector, specifically around the pork sector. Any updates on that?
Yes, Steve Huel, to respond to that. I think that clearly we have been very much aware of the difficulties that our exporters have been encountering into the European Union. We've had continuing conversations with the European Union at various levels, including officials levels, the minister, and have been pushing this issue continually. I think we are beginning to see some signs of progress, and I think when it comes to pork and beef in particular, we still have a bit of a challenge in finding the right way to get into the EU market. The EU does have, as I'm sure you're aware, very significant restrictions when it comes to hormone-treated beef and other requirements that they impose on imports coming into the EU. But we are making progress on all those issues. It's much slower than we'd like to have it happen, but we are getting there.
Okay, so in regards to just say pork, I understand, I'm probably going to mispronounce this, trichinella and in the pork. And it's my understanding that the EU wants every container shipped to the EU to be tested for this. Is that the holdup with pork going to the European Union?
That's probably the most significant holdup at this point in time. Until we can demonstrate that we don't have that in Canada, it's going to be a bit of a challenge to be able to assure the EU that this is not going to be an issue in our bilateral trade. So that is another issue that we're working on. Unfortunately, these issues always take longer than we think they should with the EU, but we are making progress on those issues.
Okay. So just like I look at it and I say, how much can a test cost to test every container of pork going to the EU? How much does that cost to do a test?
I don't know the cost of the test offhand. I think ideally what we would look for is to be able to assure the EU that we don't need those kinds of tests, because we will have taken the necessary steps within Canada before the product is shipped to the EU to an extent where we can assure them that this is not an issue. So
well, I guess, that I can't disagree with what you're saying, but at the same time, if there's a way to do the test to satisfy them until we can demonstrate the other, it would seem that would be the route to go. Because I know when the announcement was made on this trade deal, when it was fully completed or fully implemented, it would be $600 million a year for beef and $400 million a year for pork. And I think if I'm correct, I might be wrong, it's only $7 million a year for pork. And we actually have a red meat trade deficit with the European Union, which is just completely baffling to my mind. So I guess it'd be better for the minister maybe to answer some of this, but is there a strategy to turn this around? Because to me, this would be one of the great failings of the government to implement a trade deal with 500 million people. And we're kind of one of the kings of beef and pork production in the world. And we have we were worried about a problem with cheese from France and Italy. And here we are, we're getting blown out on beef and pork. So is there a strategy to correct this? Because, it won't be too many years until this is fully enforced on the red meat side. So what can we do to get this fixed immediately?
Well, one of the things that I think we have to do, the most important thing we have to do, is to continue working with our own industry on our side to make sure that we're taking the necessary steps to meet the conditions that are required to enter the European Union. So it's a bit of work with the EU, but it's also a bit of work with our own production, because the EU has very specific requirements for getting into their market.
Right.
And we're not able to change those very easily. So to some extent, we have to meet those requirements. And that does require some changes in certain production practices on our side.
Fair enough. But if we use that pork example.
Sorry, Mr. Lobb.
It couldn't be 5 minutes yet, Miss Scroll.
Sorry, it is. I stretch it out as much as I can for everybody. Ms. Vidalian, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. A first question for the officials relates to some of the progress made with the Ottawa Group over the last number of weeks and months. I understand that there was a meeting this summer. I'm not sure who would like to take the question, but if you could update the committee on how that important work is going in order to reform the WTO.
Yes, I will take that question. Thank you, Madam Chair. The Ottawa Group has been a particularly valuable vehicle for Canada to have influence in discussions around the WTO. And I think that what we have seen is that when we look around the various conversations that are taking place at the WTO, the only real mechanism for trying to advance issues is the Ottawa Group. It's essentially the only game in town right now in terms of really trying to make progress. You mentioned the meeting, I think that took place back in June. We did establish a work program at that point in time. We've had a total of 5 meetings at the ministerial level. Since we formed the Ottawa Group, we've had 5 meetings at the deputy minister's level, and we are starting to make significant advances on some of these issues. And for the moment, at least, we're putting particular priority on access for medicines and medical supplies, and trying to ensure that trade is going to flow as easily as possible for those types of products. But at the same time, we're also looking at areas like electronic commerce, trade facilitation, looking at more predictable trade in agricultural products. And that's all about trying to find ways to ensure that trade is going to move. We're not going to have the kind of export restrictions that we've seen from many countries as a result of the pandemic. And the Ottawa Group is beginning now to demonstrate that it can deliver some actual results.
Thank you very much. That's very helpful. Switching gears a little bit to our exporters, I'm just looking at a StatsCan report from August 2019 to August 2020, and it appears that the number of exporters in metropolitan urban areas fell by about 14.5%, compared with a decline of about 10% for exporters outside of metropolitan areas. We're talking about a 16% decline for Montreal, about 15% for Toronto, which is a fairly significant. And I'm just curious how you might explain that difference, and what policies we might be able to put in place in order to address that discrepancy.
I think that's probably a question that may be more easily answered by my colleague, Sarah Wilshaw.
Yes, hi. That is a very interesting result, and I'm not sure I've seen that StatsCan report, but thank you for drawing it to my attention. I can say that I know that our chief economist has been looking at exporters, and she actually put out a very interesting stat last week, noting that the number of Canadian SMEs exporting went from 19,600 in February down to 15,600 in April, but is now back up to 18,400. It's still 6% lower than it was in February, but a significant improvement. So while I'm not sure I can identify the reasons why you have noted, or that StatsCan had noted, some urban-rural differences in those export numbers, I can say that they are coming back up, which is encouraging, and hopefully it means that our exporters are learning, as we all are, to work with the technology and to access e-commerce platforms, and do things virtually. As I think I've said as well, we've got lots of supports for folks in that space, including financial support under the CanExport program.
Thank you very much. On to Mr. Savard Tremblay for 2.5 minutes.
2 minutes.
2.5 minutes, okay. Thank you. Thank you to all the representatives here today. I would like to ask you a broad question right now, given that one of the subjects that will keep us busy over the next few weeks, and what we've chosen as a priority as a committee here, is this agreement with the UK. Where are we with regards to an eventual draft agreement with the UK?
Madam Chair, I think that the discussions we've been having with the UK have advanced considerably since we resumed discussions back at the end of the summer. We now feel that we're within range of agreement on an outcome to the transitional agreement that we've been talking about. And just to remind members, we are looking at negotiating an outcome that will allow us to have a transitional agreement in place as the UK exits the EU, so that we don't lose the preferences that we've negotiated under CETA in relation to the UK. But as part of that negotiation, we would also expect to negotiate a full free trade agreement after the UK is entirely out of the EU. So the discussions that we're having on the transition agreement with the UK are actually going reasonably well. We are making some progress. We think we're fairly close to the finish line, but we're not quite there. And as you can imagine, in any kind of trade negotiation, the most difficult parts are the ones that you deal with at the very end.
Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much. It's really wonderful to have answers, clear answers, finally. I would like to also ask, what were the main stumbling blocks, given that this transition agreement in the beginning we could believe that it would be very similar to CETA? So what were the main points that made it so that this agreement was not signed so easily? I imagine that it would have been more difficult. It'll be more difficult to have a permanent agreement. But as for the transition agreement, why wasn't it? What were the stumbling blocks?
Verl, a short answer, please.
Okay, I'll be very short. The main challenge was that we were taking the CETA agreement, which was with all of the EU members, and trying to convert it to a UK agreement only. That did require us to negotiate on some market access issues in particular. That meant separating what we had provided to the EU in CETA and converting that into what we provide to the UK and what they would provide to us in a bilateral transitional agreement. So it was a lot of the issues were very easy, but there's a handful of issues where we do have to have actual negotiations to reach a landing zone.
Thank you very much. On to Mr. Blakey, please, for 2.5 minutes.
Very much. On that question, I mean, to what extent is the European Union involved in those negotiations at all? Just to give you an example, in the last Parliament, I traveled to the UK and to Ireland and had the opportunity to ask a question in each forum about the market access that was granted in the dairy sector, for instance. And folks in the UK were of the view that they could get an equal or a certain share of what was granted under CETA. And folks in Ireland were very much of the view that market access belonged in CETA. So to what extent are you talking to folks in the European Union throughout these negotiations? Are they actually at the table, or is Canada having to shuttle between a table with UK negotiators and a table with CETA partners?
Well, we're certainly continuing to talk with our EU counterparts, who, of course, we know very well from our negotiations, but they are not at the table. We're keeping in touch with them, but they are not actively engaged in any of the discussions between Canada and the UK on these issues. The decision we made fairly early on was that we would leave the various concessions and commitments made in CETA between Canada and the EU as they were. So we did not take access out of the CETA to provide to the UK. Instead, we tried to transfer all of the areas where we had rules-based kinds of approaches to the Canada-UK discussions. And the market access issues would be largely transferred, but did not involve taking access away from the Canada-EU agreement. So that's the premise that we developed early on. The UK, understandably, is not concerned about that, given that they're not giving anything up. And so it's up to us to sort the rest out with the UK, which we're actively doing, and as I mentioned earlier, are getting quite close to an outcome.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry, Mr. Blakey, the time is up. On to Ms. Gray for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'd like to thank the officials for being here today. So in 2018, the government created the Invest in Canada Hub as a way to promote and facilitate foreign investment. Can state-owned enterprises or companies affiliated with state-owned enterprises invest through the Invest in Canada Hub? I'll leave it up to whichever official would like to answer that.
Yes, I think that's more likely in Sarah Wilshaw's area than mine.
So thank you very much for the question. So investments that come into Canada, whether they come through the Invest in Canada hub or through some other means, or whether they're facilitated by the trade commissioners, over a certain threshold are subject to the Invest in Canada Act. So the Invest in Canada Act says that it's there to look at, it provides for the review of significant investments that are made by non-Canadians, and it looks at a couple of tests. One is
Ms. Wilshaw, thank you, and I'm quite familiar with that. But what my question is specifically for the Invest in Canada hub. Are there, because there is money that's allocated as a to focus on that, and so can state-owned enterprises or affiliated, are they going through this? I understand that there's a separate process to look at that, but can they actually go through this process?
So the Invest in Canada hub has its own. It should be very clear that they operate as a departmental corporation. So they have their own board of directors, their own president and CEO. And I think that the question would probably be better directed towards them. But you have correctly identified that they have a certain budget that is allocated, and the trade commissioners work very closely with them. Okay. I do think that the process by which they determine who goes through them should be better directed towards that organization.
Okay. Well, we are talking about main estimates today, and it is right in the main estimate. So I would think that somebody would be here that could answer this. Do you happen to know if any of the investments that have gone through this have undergone a national security review? Or is that not, do we not have anyone here that can answer that either?
I would have to come back to you on that.
Okay, that's unfortunate, because we are talking specifically about what's in main estimates here. So I wanted to ask, we did hear today that there were some investments that came into Canada, and so I'd like to ask to have tabled what the dollar value is by industry. That has come through the Invest in Canada hub. We did hear some numbers earlier. So what the dollar value is by industry, what the jobs are by industry, what the number of new companies are, and what the breakdown is, whether the investment was in existing companies or whether it was in new companies. So is there anyone that can table that information, or is that something that can be taken away to be tabled at an early date?
Madam Chair, we can refer the questions over to the Invest in Canada hub and seek responses.
Wonderful. Great, thank you. Thank you. When I look at the different department officials that are here today, you've all been operating for about 19 months without a budget. So I'm wondering if you can go into some details as to what it looks like when you're operating without a budget. How do you plan? How do you strategize? And so what does that look like when you don't have a budget that you're operating under?
Well, maybe I'll start. We're not actually operating with a budget in the Trade Policy and Negotiations branch. We do have our budget. We have had to make significant adjustments to our budget because we're not traveling as much as we used to, and that's been a major of our budget. But without question, we are certainly operating within a budget for the course of this year.
Okay, well, the budget hasn't been approved of by Parliament, so that's
that's
part of the whole process.
This is a departmental budget that operates as it has in the past.
A very short question, Ms. Gray.
Okay, well, thank you. I think the only other thing is if we have anyone that can table some information regarding the consular services. I know that we did have a meeting earlier about this, but if there's any information as to what the plans are, what the stats are moving forward, going into the new year, what that's going to look like.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. On to Mr. Sheehan.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you very much to the presenters and to the minister before. And One of the things that, obviously is right before us here is like we're all talking right now on Zoom. We're doing this virtually and quite successfully. We're getting the work done necessary to do. Now, you heard the minister earlier, and I'll talk to Steve right there. And Steve, good to see you again. You've testified many, many times. In particular, I'd like to acknowledge your work on the NAFTA deal. And you have a door behind you, and it was interesting to see that. There's doors of opportunity. There's shut doors. There's people knocking at the door. So I want to talk to you, and perhaps I'll start with Steve, about the opportunities with the virtual announcement today as it relates to some of the trade agreements that you've worked on, and in particular, not just for the big companies, but the small and medium-sized companies, and for all the other witnesses too as well. I just wanted to get some comments because we've seen so much of this work that this trade committee has done related to opening up markets in Europe, in Asia, and North America. Has any of that been hindered? And first, I think that we'll start with that question first and then talk about opportunities is in this COVID-19 world. How have our trade deals been doing? So thank you, Madam Chair.
Well, I think I'll start and others will certainly have something to add to this. I think that's, particularly since we had a number of trade agreements coming into place, certainly CETA was before COVID-19, as was CPTPP. The new agreement with the U.S. and Mexico came into effect during the pandemic. Clearly, I think we've seen some difficult times faced by our exporters, without a doubt. But I think that's more a function of the general challenges of the economy because of what's happening with COVID-19, more than anything to do with our trade agreements. I think our trade agreements have, in fact, helped to somewhat dampen some of the impacts that we would have seen otherwise. So while we're starting to see trade recover, particularly in those areas where we do have agreements, obviously, there are a lot of companies that are struggling just because of the domestic situation as much as trying to get out into the international markets. So I think we're a bit held hostage at the broader economic challenges that we're facing at the moment. And we do need to do whatever we can to help those companies get back into the game in some ways as we move forward. But my colleague Sarah Wilshaw may have something further to add because I think she's been more engaged in trying to help those companies move forward in this circumstance.
Yes, Madam Chair, if I have just a moment to add to that, certainly we are looking to promote, and we have been out actively promoting with a number of our partners, both federal and provincial, as well as chambers, to promote the trade agreements that we do have and the access that has been gained, and to try and take advantage of those things as best we can. So we also look at where specific gains have been made, and we make those things clear. We have ways of helping our companies to find out what the tariffs are now, and to specifically focus on taking the best advantage of what has been negotiated and agreed.
Well, thank you very much for that. And I can really tell you that, being in Sault Ste. Marie right on the border here and seeing the amount of trade that comes through here, and naturally by extension that we're seeing a lot of these trade agreements that are opened up to Europe and Asia as using us as a center point, to access, all the markets is really important. So I think it behooves us to continue to, explore ways in which, whether it's virtually, for people to make contact, because I've been on trade missions and I see a lot of people here that I've traveled with that nothing beats the face-to-face and the eyeballing. So I hope that, that this is a interim solution until we get to such time where we can do that. But to the points about saving money, Steve, do you have an idea, just for estimates, how much money was saved versus doing things virtually And if you don't have that number, I understand you may be able to get to that committee, and you guys may not be at a level yet because you're so busy helping people that you haven't sat back and looked at that. But that was, I think, commented maybe by Randy earlier about that. But I would be interested to see value versus, spent money value versus results virtually versus in person as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think I would have to say that, and I can say this from my own personal experience too. There's certainly no substitute for having face-to-face discussions. Whether you're trying to do negotiations or whether you're trying to do business, I think that there's an extra element there that makes it that much easier to do those kinds of deals. But given that we haven't been in a position to have those kinds of face-to-face discussions from our perspective, a lot of what we've been doing is we have had a significantly increased emphasis on digital trade, electronic commerce, trying to give companies what they need, both in trade agreements and in Sarah Wilshaw's group, in helping companies to get to be able to more effectively participate in electronic commerce that way. So we're trying to address that in many ways. And I think we've made significant improvements, and many companies have enthusiastically adopted the digital trade type of approaches, and we've helped them to do that. But again, at the end of the day, I think as you're suggesting, it's still not the same as having face-to-face conversations and doing deals that way.
Thank you very much, Mr. Verrill. We have a slot here for the Conservative member. Whoever wants to go forward, Mr. Hoback, Ms. Gray.
We've got, we'll continue on with the line that of order, the speaking order that we had. So we'll just continue on.
Okay, well, I have an open slot here for round 4 for
it would be Mr. Abultai. It would be Mr. Abultai.
Okay, as Mr. Abultai. Okay, thank you very much.
Well, thank you for the department. Of course, I expect some concrete answers. I wasn't able to get that from the minister, unfortunately. So I know that digital trade and try to adapt to new ways of doing things. All that's fine and dandy. That's just a mechanism, nothing but. What is the real target where we know that we can grow our economy through growing investments coming to Canada and trade with the rest of the world, where we do show some at least proper balance for what we trade and what we what we export and what we import. More or less, I like to hear from the department where's the target and which industries the department is working on to grow that sector and the many competitive sectors that we have in Canada.
Well, I think we're working with obviously other parts of the department, because the key to achieve what you're talking about is really making sure that our domestic policy intersects properly with our trade policy. Now, we are in a fortunate position compared to many others because we do have agreements with the European Union. We have agreements with the Trans-Pacific Partnership, so Southeast Asia, including Japan and others. And we have our agreement with the US and Mexico. So with all of the agreements we do have advantages over others. So we are certainly making the most of what we can do on that front. And I think that that does give us that kind of advantage. But in terms of setting priorities, we really get that kind of input through consultations that we have with industry and consultations that we have within the government, particularly from domestic policy departments who are telling us where they want to see the particular sectors advance.
Okay, the interprovincial efforts are very, very important and critical. And you just mentioned that in order to be able to give us the exposure and the edge to be able to do more trade. Do you think we're doing a good job on that? Don't you think that we still have a lot of red tape, a lot of problems and difficulties trading among provinces, and that edge, that advantage, we seem to not to have, and I think it's getting worse. What do you think?
Well, I don't think we can say anything other than that we do have more work to do at home in particular. Interprovincial barriers are something that we need to address to ensure that we can, as a country like Canada, have the most coherent posture when we go out to other countries, and not be held back by barriers between provinces. That's something that is being worked on as well. And I think given the kinds of pressures every economy is under right now because of COVID, we have to do that much better in removing barriers to trade and trying to facilitate more opportunities. So that work is going on. It may not be proceeding as quickly as we might like, but we are certainly focused on that in terms of trying to leave Canada in the best position we can have it in as we start to come out of this particular crisis, hopefully before too long, and we will be well poised to take advantage of agreements once we do that.
To have our house in order and to be prepared, at least to prepare the ground to be able to explore further opportunities. Do you? I mean, how do you you envision that the timelines here? Because missing an opportunity in this time after we're still in the middle of pandemic, but we will be talking about post-pandemic at some point sooner than later. How are we preparing ourselves to that from your perspective as a department? I'm talking to the people that do the job, whether this government or other government in place, or this minister or other minister. So you are doing the job. How do you think we're doing, and how do you think we're handling both directions to achieve and to reach the final goal?
Well, I think we are in pretty good shape, and we're doing what we need to do. Certainly from the kind of work that I do, we have the various trade agreements in place. We have those preferences. We have advantages in other markets for the countries. And all of that is very well advanced. I think that my colleague Sarah Wilshaw on her front has been working on a lot of the issues of making sure that Canadian business is ready to take advantage of those agreements, that they're coming out of the pressures we've been under in a much stronger position and able to advance in those agreements. And I probably should turn to Sarah to see if she has.
I have just one short statement.
I'm sorry, Mr. Abidal, you're way off. Your questions are so intense, but maybe you can get some of those answers offline if we can just continue on. Mr. Dhaliwal, please. Mr. Dhaliwal.
Okay, 20 seconds right here. Thank you, Madam Chair. My question will go to Chief Trade Commissioner Wilshaw. First of all, I would also echo the congratulations to you on your new appointment. And I'm picking up on MP Randeep Sarai's question that was asked in the last committee meeting, particularly when it comes to pulses going into India. Every month, I hear from one or two that are interested in doing the trade because there's a lot of demand there. And you particularly mentioned, your trade commissioner services in India try to help the problems that they face on ground. Could you elaborate what are some of those issues that they face?
Certainly, and thank you for the question. So in fact, we do have people who are dedicated to agriculture and supporting agriculture and agri-food industries and our farmers in the mission in New Delhi, and obviously they are looking at the different requirements and regulations for importing, and they make those known to our Canadian exporters and our clients, and they have regular conversations with officials in the Indian government about those regulations. Some of those conversations happen internationally. Some of those conversations happen bilaterally. And of course, Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada has the lead on those discussions. As I think I mentioned on Friday, we always hope that the conversation can be science-based when it comes to any regulations or requirements for the importing. But in terms of, and that's really more on that side and the trade policy colleagues who look after those things. But in terms of what we do in the Trade Commissioner Services would help our exporters to perhaps find new markets, perhaps to find alternative markets or alternative buyers or wholesalers or other uses for different agricultural products if they do run into challenges. And that's the kind of thing that we look to do.
But nowadays we are, finding that the businesses are facing unique situations. Does the strategy on the ground when it comes to Trade Commission services, not only in India but across the globe, has been changed, or a strategy has been redefined to support businesses?
So I'm really proud of what the Trade Commissioner Service has been actually doing in this period during the pandemic to support the businesses. They haven't stopped, not for a second. We have more than 12,000 clients. And no one has dropped the ball. We would hear about it very quickly. We have a regular feedback mechanism to understand our client satisfaction. We do a lot of work, and we have very high responses from our clients in terms of understanding where what they like about our service and what they think could be improved. And we work regularly with our whole network to keep a very, very high standard of service. I think I mentioned last Friday that we are running at about 91% client satisfaction. I'm very proud of that, as I say, and I'm very proud of what our trade commissioners have been able to do. Of course, we do also have locally engaged officers who have never left the markets in which they serve. And so even though some of the Canadians had been evacuated, most of them have been returned, all but I believe 7 posts have been returned. But our locally engaged employees who are really the market experts and give that information, they never left.
Thank you very much, Ms. Wilshaw.
Thank you.
On to Mr. Savard Tremblay for 2 minutes.
Oui, merci.
Thank you. And so I would like to continue what I was saying earlier because we were restricted in time. And so if you could speak a bit more to this agreement between the UK and the EU regarding negotiations and which, because this was a problem for a long time, and so we're wondering where those negotiations are at.
Well, certainly the negotiations that we're currently conducting with the UK, as I mentioned, are on a transitional agreement that we can reach, which would try to preserve as many of the elements of CETA as we can as the UK moves out of the EU and into a relationship where they're no longer a part of the EU. So we do have discussions that we're having with the UK right now, and we're in the final stages of reaching, hopefully, a transitional trade agreement. Most of the issues we're talking about relate to goods market access, because that's one of the issues where we can't simply leave what we had in place with the EU under CETA and replicate it entirely in a UK Canada context. You can do that on rules-related issues, but you can't do it when you start to talk about numbers. So we've been doing that, and that's been much of the focus. We also have had some challenges in trying to resolve issues related to temporary entry of business people for business purposes. That was part of the commitment under CETA. It's been particularly difficult with the UK as it was in CETA, but that's carried over to these transition discussions as well. But we really only have a fairly small handful of issues left to resolve, and then I think we can reach agreement on a transitional arrangement, which will then allow CETA to continue after the UK finally does leave the EU at the end of the year, and that will give us the opportunity to negotiate a full free trade agreement with the UK following that. In the meantime,
thank you very much, Mr. Verrill. On to Mr. Blakey for 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. The main estimates that we're considering were tabled on September 30th, but in fact, they were really tabled on February 27th because the two documents, as I understand it, are identical. I know you had mentioned that the pandemic has affected, for example, your travel budget. It's going to be less, obviously. Can you speak to why there wasn't an attempt to update the request for authorization of spending?
Well, there were changes. As I'm sure you know, there is an allocation given to departments in terms of departmental budgets, and within that, my own branch, as a relatively small proportion of that overall departmental budget, and we're allocated a certain amount every year. Now, through the course of the year, given that we have not been traveling as much, we have returned a fair amount of those funds because we weren't going to be using them for travel expenses. But that is regular ongoing spending. It doesn't relate to any additional allocations or additional requests that we may get coming out of a budget, for example. We're not in that kind of scenario at this point in time.
Okay, so despite the fact that you're just from your own unit, you're returning money to the main department budget, but you don't anticipate requiring any additional expenditure in other lines?
Well, I wouldn't say that entirely. I think that as we move forward, we have been required to deal with some of the elements that we have to fulfill with respect to the implementation of new agreements. So particularly when it comes to the new agreement with the US and Mexico, we do have additional duties that we have to perform, which will take additional people to perform them.
Just because our time is limited, could you table with the committee where you think you'll have cost savings and where you think you'll have additional expenditures between the forecast that you had in February versus what you project for the remainder of this fiscal year?
Well, I wouldn't have any difficulty doing that, but I will caution you that this is generally done at a departmental level rather than at a branch by branch level, and I'm responsible for a branch rather than the department. So what you would probably want to see is how things look at a departmental level rather than some of the smaller branches. But certainly that
trade committee is always interested in the work of your branch, so I would accept that. And of course, if you can table information concerning the wider departmental budget, that would be welcome as well. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you all very much. I think the department officials had several requests from different members for various reports. If you could do your best to supply that information to the committee members, to all of them, to all of us, we would very much appreciate that. So the committee can now proceed with the adoption of the vote referred to the House. Note that this is not mandatory to do a vote, but without a report on the estimate, main estimates are being deemed reported. For your information, one vote was referred to the committee by the House under Invest in Canada in the main estimates. That vote was at $34,291,556. In March and June, the House adopted 9/12 of that amount through interim supply. Therefore, the amount before the committee now is of $8,571,889. Is it the will of the committee to proceed with the adoption of the main estimates?
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Blakey.
I apologize. I'm just a little just getting used to the virtual proceedings, but I don't know if Obviously, if other members would like to have a recorded division, that's fine. But I don't know if I could recommend that we just consider it passed on division at this time.
I believe so. Is there any further discussion on that? Is everyone in agreement with that?
Right on.
Okay, and it'll be passed on division. I have to finish off one spot here, though. Pursuant to Standing Order 81-4, the committee will now dispose of the main estimates for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2021, minus the interim supply the House agreed to on March 13th and on June 17th, 2021. Shall vote 1 under Invest in Canada Hub be carried? And I believe Mr. Blakey said carried on division.
Point of order, Chair.
Mr. Appletuff, yes.
Are we supposed to have the witnesses still, as we discuss?
As soon as we complete this vote, then the witnesses will be leaving, sir. All right. Shall I report this vote to the House? On division. All those in favor. Thank you all very much. Thank you to our witnesses for spending so much time with us. We were able to get a lot of questions and a lot of answers in today, so that was very much appreciated. So you're welcome to leave the meeting. We have some committee business now that we will go on to, which consists of discussion of Mr. Dhaliwal's motion. Thank you, Mr. Verrill. Thank you to all of you, Ms. Wilshaw. Thank you to all of the witnesses that were here. So we'll just give the witnesses a second to leave. All right. Okay. So everybody is here now. We had Mr. Dhaliwal, your motion. Mr. Sheehan had moved 2 suggested amendments. Okay, Mr. Dhaliwal cannot hear us.
I think Suk is up.
Okay. Mr. Sheehan, do you want to move the two amendments?
I certainly will move the amendments once again, and I think that while Suk is just connected to the audio, it's just really important for us to, just finish off this discussion and make sure that what you explained so well last time and why it's so important. And Suk's going to come in now, and I think he's there. There he goes.
Okay, Mr. Dhaliwal.
Madam Chair, I have 3 amendments.
Okay.
Sorry.
And the committee has all 3 amendments. And I think we should let's take
Suk
them
has
individually.
to unmute. Sorry, Madam Chair.
This wonderful system we're on here. Okay.
Okay. Sorry, Madam Chair, did you say something to me because I couldn't get it?
It was suggested that Mr. Sheehan was going to move several amendments to your motion.
Sure.
Okay.
Go ahead, Terry.
I so move, Madam Chair, and I'll let you pick up from where we left last time.
Okay, so one
Chair,
is.
point of order.
Okay.
I just want to verify that the 3 amendments are actually what you said had to be changed in order for it to be in order, based on the recommendations from the clerk. Is that sure?
Absolutely. I'm going to, and if anybody has trouble with them, we can vote on them individually. And I believe everybody ensured that the clerk circulated another listing. This simply makes it easier for me to have committee business, and that's the whole motion on there. That the chair may schedule all or portions of a meeting to be in camera for the reasons listed above in Mr. Dhaliwal's motion. Is everyone in favor of that amendment? And the second part was suggested here, that any motion to sit in camera shall be subject to a debate where the mover and 1 member from each of the other recognized parties be given up to 3 minutes each to speak to the motion, and that the mover shall then be given up to 1 minute to respond. That is simply so that we don't spend an hour debating on whether we're going to go in camera or not. It just kind of gives some timelines on it. Any discussion? Everyone in favor of that motion?
Right on.
And Madam Clerk, I do not have the third one in front of me here.
The third one was in the first part of the motion, and it was to add D, to discuss committee business, like to authorize the in-camera meeting to discuss committee business.
Okay, everybody's in favor of that? Okay, wonderful. Thank you all very much.
So the motion is passed as amended?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Can we ask the question, please, Ms. Chair?
Yeah. All those in favor of the motion as amended? Oh, I don't see anything happening here. Guys, wave or do something or another. It's a strange system.
Right on.
Okay, are we okay? All right. So next week's a break week, and the whips have so far not scheduled any committee meetings for that week. Our next study is going to be the UK-Canada trade, and we've asked the whip that the next two meetings scheduled by the whip to allow the clerk to be in a position to proceed with the invitation for witnesses for the UK-Canada trade. Once the whips have decided what the schedule is, that's our next issue is the UK-Canada, and that the clerk have witnesses proposed by the members for the first meeting and officials for the second meeting. So that's once the clerk has decided what our next two meetings were, there will be Canada-UK. Is everyone okay with that? All right. All those in favor?
Madam Chair?
A point of order. Okay. Yes, Trace. Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to ask because we originally had scheduled, it was scheduled a committee meeting on Friday the 13th. So just to clarify that you're saying that meeting won't be happening now?
No, because the whips have not finalized a schedule. So we will be meeting the following week. And again, the very first thing we're dealing with is the UK-Canada agreement, which was your motion. All right.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Thank you all very much for your cooperation.
Sorry, Madam Chair, point of order.
Okay. Yes.
I had understood, and we were certainly preparing on our side to propose witnesses for the UK Canada study, and we were looking at stakeholders, as that is what I had understood from our last meeting. Are we still beginning with stakeholders, just so I know how to prepare on our end?
Yes, witnesses for the first meeting and officials for the second meeting was the suggestion.
Okay. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Madam Chair, just another quick point of clarification. When would you like an initial list of witnesses submitted, or when should we be submitting witnesses?
I think we need to get them submitted immediately. The clerk had given us a date, Madam Clerk.
Yeah.
What was the date? I believe they've.
An email was sent requesting the list of witnesses for November 3rd, but it could be for Friday because at this point we know that we won't be having a meeting next week. So if it's okay with the members, the list of witnesses for the Canada-UK trade study should be for Friday. Is that fine?
That works for me.
Okay with everybody? Okay, it sounds like a very interesting study. All right. Okay, thank you all very much. I move adjournment.
Thank you.
Thank you all.